Welcome to this meeting of the Eastern Planning Committee, Wednesday, 20th of May, 2026. I'm Councillor David Took, Chair of this committee. My Vice Chair is Councillor Sally House. The meeting is being live streamed and is available to view on the Council's website. And by attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. The Planning Committee, excuse me. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited, and all attendees must comply with the ruling of the Chair. Members of the public must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. This is limited to the first 3 people objecting, the first 3 people supporting the application who have registered, along with the town or parish council and ward members. No additional material is to be circulated to members of the committee today. We have 2 applications to determine today. The planning officer will be invited to present their report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak with the Democratic Services Officer before the deadline to address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant or agent, town parish council, and ward members. Each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes. Following on from the registered speakers, the planning officers will have the opportunity to address any salient points they wish and to clarify, and committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officers before moving on to their debate. At the end of the debate, we will take a vote and I will declare the decision of the committee. Can I remind members that when we go into council questions and debate, please state your name and ward for the benefit of the public watching and speak directly into the microphones so that we can all hear you. Please remember that the microphones on the tables, to the small, oddly shaped ones, are on all the time. They will pick up any audio during the meeting. If anyone is using Teams, please ensure you're on mute and your device volume is set to 0. Before we begin, just a few final points regarding general housekeeping. We are not expecting a fire alarm during today's meeting. However, should the alarm sound, please leave the building calmly and without delay using the nearest fire exits, which are located to the side of the room. The meeting will be formally adjourned at that point and will only resume once it is safe to do so. I'd like to say welcome to the committee and to any members of the public, including those joining via web link. Officers involved in today's meeting are Kim Cowell, who's an Eastern Area Manager for Development Management, Elizabeth Adams, Development Manager, Team Leader, Thomas Wild, the Project Officer, Susan Hetherington, Transport Development Liaison Manager, Lara Altree, Senior Lawyer, Megan Rochester, who's a Senior Democratic and Governance Officer, and Josh Kennedy, who is our Committee Clerk and Democratic and Governance Officer. We have apologies from absence, Josh, from...
We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Oxchell.
Thank you. Does any member have a declaration of interest that they wish to make? Councillor Florey.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Scott Fleur, Corf Mullen. Both Duncan and I will be speaking on agenda item number 6 as the ward councillors, and then we will be exiting the room.
Thank you. Do you have anything to say, Duncan?
No.
That was
Exactly that.
so for you. Thank you. Anybody else to make a declaration of interest? No. Any objections? You've all seen the minutes of the previous meeting. Anyone got any queries on those? No. So I'll sign those later, Josh. At this point, the public can make their representations if they wish, or they can wait until after the presentation on their item. So unless anyone's desperate to speak now, we'll come back to that. Okay, so we move to the agenda item 5, which is P4 2023 07270 12 Golf Links Road, Ferndown, BS22 8BY. The presentation will be by Elizabeth Adams. Liz?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. The application before you is, as explained, for 8 flats with demolition of the existing dwelling at 12 Golf Links Road in Ferndown. The site lies within the urban area, which policy cares to identify as a main settlement where infill development will be achieved. The town centre is shown here in orange, and the site is outlined in red up here. So this is a sustainable location for additional residential development within the settlement. Planning policy seeks that optimal use is made of land to accommodate development. And then the purple areas here are special character areas. These are local design designated areas. And the main issues raised by objectors to development is a perceived failure to accord with the special character area development criteria, alongside harm to neighbouring community, impact on highway safety and flood risk. So, as you'll probably be aware, supplementary planning guidance sets out the characteristics for which the special character areas have been designated and the development criteria to inform decision making. The new road special character area is a high quality environment characterised by detached dwellings on generous plots, but responding to the need to use land more efficiently, some blocks of flats have been achieved of 2 and 3 stories, which I've just popped a star on the aerial photograph for you. And these include the plot next door, where the block of 6 flats has been constructed since this photograph was taken. The development criteria for this special character area and an assessment of the compliance of the proposal are set out in the officer report. On these slides, I've just provided some visuals for context. So the existing bungalow is marked with blue on the block plan. The pink dashed line is the footprint of an extant planning consent for a 2-storey dwelling house. And the current proposal is for the creation of 8 2-bedroom flats over 3 stories. And these will be served by a rear cycle shed and storage building. So that's the storage building there, cycle shed, which I've got on another slide later on. And we have a bin store to the front. This meets Dorset Waste Team's requirements to be within 10 metres of the highway for collection. The orange parking spaces here are those where cell web will be applied to avoid harm to the trees in the frontage. Officers recognise that the proposal represents a significant increase in the built form on the plot, reducing opportunities for landscaping, but the scheme maintains the property setback and soft boundary treatment to the frontage. And there are a variety of houses and blocks of flats along Golf Links Road. This is the current street scene. So it's proposed to remove the cypress hedge, which currently screens both the application site and the flats at number 14, which you can just see the roof of above the hedge at the moment. So the proposed development would be more visually prominent than the existing hidden bungalow. One of the oak trees at the front, this one here, is category U and is proposed for removal. But this is acceptable to the council's tree officers given its status. So this is number 14, which you can see has already been developed, and then number 10 to the side, which we'll look at again later. This is just a selection of properties as we move down the road. Properties on the other side of the road are slightly denser and less vegetated, but within the special character area, the boundary treatment and the trees contribute to the spacious character along with the setback from the highway. And you can see quite substantial properties along with some bungalows. And further down the street, these are the flats that you start to see as you head south. So the proposed building has been designed to have the appearance of a large dwelling, and the articulation and the architectural features help to reduce the visual dominance within the streetscape. From the north, the pitched roof and the chimney will be the main contributor within the street scene, as the projection to the rear is set back further away from the northern boundary. On approach from the south, the development will be screened to some extent by both the block at number 14 and by the treescape. Again, the pink dashed line on here is the previously approved dwelling, which I've just popped on this slide. So permission was granted in 2021 for this 2-storey 4-bedroom dwelling to replace the bungalow. And the council's record suggests that permission is extant following excavation for foundations, although these were subsequently filled in. The permission is therefore a fallback position, which is a material consideration. Trees are an important feature to the special character area, but as set out in the report, the trees to the rear of the site are predominantly garden trees or low category trees that are proposed for removal. The rear beech hedging here is to be retained alongside a couple of silver birch trees, and new hedging is to be planted along the side boundary, albeit with more limited scope to get as big as the current hedging. The ecological report identifies 6 replacement trees will be planted in the rear, and the council's tree officer has suggested a white beam would be suitable for this rear communal area. The relationship with neighbouring properties is a key consideration, so I've tried to pull together the approved plan for number 14 and the proposed plan, along with an old floor plan of number 10, just to try to illustrate the context provided by the adjoining properties. North is now off to the right here. The proposed flats will be a similar distance from the highway than the existing bungalow, and then the front elevation appropriately steps back to take account of the setback of number 10 into the plot. So this is the block of flats at number 14. 3 of the first floor windows are obscure glazed, but the 4th is not. I've tried to show which the ones that are obscure glazed are green, and the red is not obscured. And the rear window serves a living room, but it's a secondary window with the primary outlook to the rear. So the development as proposed will impact on outlook to the north for the occupant of the flat number 14, but the residential unit will retain its rearward outlook. And the window faces directly onto the ground and first floor window serving the communal area. So it's considered that it's appropriate that this window can reasonably be obscure glazed for the privacy of the occupants of number 14. It's also considered necessary to obscure glaze the secondary bedroom window. That's an ensuite window there. We've already talked about the communal window, and then there's 2 other windows affected, which one serves a bedroom and another one serves a kitchen. And it's considered that these should be obscured to a height of 1.7 metres because of this non-obscured window and the potential for interlooking between the 2. The main impact will be to limit some outlook from these 2 rooms. And then at second floor level, we've got roof lights in number 14, which serve the bedroom, bathroom, utility and dining room. And in order to avoid overlooking of the first floor windows to number 14, it's considered that obscure glazing up to 1.5 metres high should be installed, and that's as shown on the submitted plan. The roof lights are high level, so satisfied there's no issues there. And by obscure glazing or obscuring up to 1.5 metres, this would reduce the perception of overlooking whilst maintaining some outlook for future occupiers. Number 10 is a bungalow, and it is on slightly lower land to the north. So these plans here date back to 2014, and they're not to scale, but they do give you an idea of the modest form of the dwelling and its windows. As set out in the report, we haven't identified an overbearing impact or harmful overshadowing due to the articulation of the building and the use of the pitch on the roof. But we have identified the need for 2 windows and a balcony. So this is, again, it's an ensuite for that one. This is a wraparound window. So it would just be the northern part of that window that would be obscured, and then a balcony screen here to avoid harmful overlooking of the neighbour. Windows are judged on the north elevation to provide sufficient separation with the boundary to avoid harmful overlooking. Properties to the rear of the site are chalet bungalows on Wingwood Road. These have dormers and there's windows on the gable of number 484. So it's been important to consider the relationship with that property. The proposed 3-storey block is anticipated to introduce a perception of overlooking, but with 15.5 metres to the boundary and further distance the other side to the dwelling, it's considered that an appropriate separation is maintained to avoid harmful intervisibility. Moving on to flood risk. During the course of the application, the MPPF was updated and planning practice guidance as well, and the Environment Agency has published new flood risk data. So an initial flood risk assessment has been updated to take account of the changes. The site lies in an area with high groundwater levels, and the latest Environment Agency data has shown that there's a potential for flooding of up to 10 centimetres in depth at the rear of the site in a 1 in 100 year event plus climate change. But the flooding is not on a flood path and the depths are modest. So we then have requested indicative drainage plan, which has been submitted to demonstrate that surface water can be appropriately managed using permeable paving even, at the front of the site, and then attenuation via public sewer, which Wessex Water has agreed. And this has led officers to judge that the development can be achieved without increasing flood risk for the site or the neighbouring land. So no sequential test has been necessary as set out in planning practice guidance. Highway safety was another concern raised, including the impacts on insufficient parking provision. The proposal for 10 spaces for the 8 flats does meet council guidelines. It's important that those spaces remain unallocated for flexibility, so that's been worked into the condition. The road is relatively narrow. It's about 5.8 metres wide, and so it is suitable to allow 2 lanes of traffic, but if somebody parks, then you're down to a single lane. And concerns have been raised from local residents, including Tricia Butler, who lives on Gulf Links Road opposite the site and was unable to attend the meeting today, but asked that her concerns be noted. I said 5.8, I mean 5.6 metres wide, and it's understood that there were congestion issues experienced when number 14 was under construction due to parking, I think, on the highway. So the need for a construction management plan to be secured by condition has been identified. This would include a requirement that the developer consider where their construction workers are going to park. Obviously, legal parking can still take place on the highway. If the town council considers that yellow lines are required, then there is a separate process outside the planning process that we are aware of. The site lies within the New Forest Habitat Site 13.8 kilometre buffer. So there is a requirement, if members are minded, to grant permission for a legal agreement to be concluded prior to the issue of a decision to secure the strategic access management and monitoring sums for the additional dwellings. Heath and contribution would be secured by the community infrastructure levy. So these are just the elevation plans for the cycle store at the back, and they're included on this slide because they would provide a back roost, because the existing bungalow supports bats. There would also be a temporary bat roost during the development to ensure that mitigation would avoid harm to protected species. And there are a number of other mitigation elements on this slide which have been agreed by the Dorset Natural Environment team to be secured by condition. So the proposal would result in a net increase in 7 dwellings in a sustainable location, and this is given significant weight by officers, especially in the light of the council's limited housing land supply of 2.53 years. The scale of development will result in some harm in respect of the character and intensity of development in the special character area, but this is assessed as limited, and living standards are judged to be acceptable, notwithstanding the need to obscure a proposed bedroom window and the impact on outlook from secondary living room window in number 14. So as explained in the officer report, taken as a whole, the adverse impacts are considered by officers to not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and hence the recommendation is for approval, subject to a number of conditions as set out in your report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liz. We have one public speaker on this, which is the agent, who is Charles Moore. Charles, if you've been here before, I think you know what to do. You press the button and you have 3 minutes, which should be timed by my vice chairman. I'll give you a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the application on behalf of the applicants. As you've heard, the proposal is to demolish the existing property at 12 Golf Links Road and erect 8 flats consisting of a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units. As you've seen from the presentation, the proposal responds positively to the surrounding character. The building has been carefully articulated to reduce its bulk and retain the appearance of a substantial domestic property, reflecting the character of the area. When travelling along Golf Links Road, the building, albeit being flats, will be indistinguishable from a detached property. The use of arts and crafts detailing, varied roof forms, chimneys and bay windows helps the scheme integrate with the established character of the area. The retention of frontage trees and the provision of new hedge planting will also help preserve the verdant quality that characterises Golf Links Road, and as such complies with the aims of policy 82 of your local plan. With regard to the relationship to neighbouring properties, there is a minimum separation distance of 15.5 metres to the rear, the northern boundary, and taking into account the intervening landscaping and screening, the proposal will not result in harmful overlooking to neighbouring properties. The applicants do not have any objection to the proposed conditions with regard to installation of balcony screens. The number of parking spaces, 10, is in accordance with your adopted standards. The proposal provides safe access to Golf Links Road with the requisite visibility displays being provided. The requirement for the applicant to provide a construction management plan prior to development commencing will ensure that the council are able to control and respond to any concerns that may arise during the construction process. And as you've seen from the plans, there's sufficient space within the site to provide site operative parking and associated compounds for storage. In summary, the highways officers confirm that the proposal does not present material harm to the transport network or to highway safety. Similarly, the council's flood risk management team is satisfied that surface water can be appropriately managed and confirms that no additional flood risk on or off the site will occur. And as you've seen from the report, your agricultural officers concluded that there is no impact on trees and does not raise an objection. The proposal will provide important public benefits, not least the provision of additional housing in a sustainable location. And with Dorset Council currently unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, the tilted balance applies in favour of the proposal. I hope you're able to support your officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Liz, do you have anything to say in response? No? So, members, over to you. We have a question of Councillor Coombs.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman. Councillor Tony Coombs, Verwood Ward. Can I refer you back to slide 16, where you were talking about the distances between properties? Sorry, slide 15. You talked about the 15.5 and the 23 metres, but I don't think you explained the 6.5 metre distance. Can you do that, please?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for that. So in the officer report, I referred to a separation between the buildings of 23.3, and that was measuring from the back of the property to the back of this property. But as you'll see, they were conservatory. So in this slide, I've added on the 6.5 metres here, which means that there's an overall distance of 22 metres building to building. Thank you.
That clarifies that. The other question I had was, can you just reiterate the reasons for the departure from the special character area? What's not meeting that criteria?
Yes, so as set out in the officer report, there is, because of the bulk of the building, there was a question about whether it does reflect the rhythm and spacing of existing dwellings. Now, your officers consider it reflects the rhythm in terms of the sort of spacing between dwellings, because you've already got a property that spans the plot. But we appreciate that it is going further back than the existing footprint and the extant footprint, so it will reduce the space slightly. You've still got 15.5 metre deep separation distance then to the boundary, which officers consider then means that the impact on that spacing is not significantly harmful. And then it talks about not subdividing gardens if it adversely affects the pattern of development. So there is some subdivision here because it's intended that the lower flats would each have a little garden here. Officers consider that provided we get the right landscaping in there, then that wouldn't adversely affect the special character area, which is predominantly the trees and the setback of the buildings and how the buildings approach the road. Then you've got so number 5, the scale, massing and height must be generally consistent with neighbouring dwellings. So here the height is consistent with number 14. The mass is obviously larger than particularly number 10. But elsewhere on the road, you had similar substantial properties. I would say that the width here means that it could appear slightly less spacious than has been achieved further south, where the plots are a little bit bigger. But again, officers are looking at the design, and we consider that actually the design reflects and appropriately responds to the width of the plot here. So it has got the articulation and the setback and the slope roof on this northern element to reduce the impact of the bulk. And then there was a question about the fact that they haven't provided a comprehensive landscaping plan with the application. They've provided a sort of a proposed ecology plan which shows planting, but we haven't got the comprehensive landscape plan which the SPD encourages. But officers don't consider that that is detrimental to the ability to be able to assess the impact of the development and whether it meets the intention of the special character area, even though it doesn't meet the letter of that requirement criterion. And I think hopefully I've summarised the report appropriately there. I think the main points was whether there was a potential loss of soft landscaping features in the criterion for, because we're trying to encourage soft landscaping features to be retained. So in this instance, we're keeping the trees at the front apart from the one that is already category U, and then new boundary hedging along here. The bin store, because it's right up against the front boundary, is against the intentions of the special character area, but in this instance I haven't got a plan picture on this slide. Let's go back. So in this instance there's a significant verge at the front of the property, and you can see that has contributed to the successful assimilation of number 14 within the street scene, and it's anticipated that it would have a similar impact for number 12. I hope that helps.
Thank you. I think what I get from all of that is that most of the impact of the move away from the special character considerations is at the rear of the property, not at the front. So from the street scene, it feels as though it does reflect the special character area. Thank you.
I take it that was a yes, Liz.
Thank you. I'd say yes. I mean, officers have concluded that it doesn't fully accord. So that, but our position is that the significance that we give that is then outweighed by the benefits of the scheme.
Thank you. Councillor Floric.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Scott Fleur, Corf Mullen. You did mention it in the very beginning, but I missed it. The orange car parking spots. Why are they orange?
Thank you. That's just to show the tree cell webbing is going to be used. I'm not quite sure. I think it's to give you confidence that they can achieve that under the tree, and they've taken that into account.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Skeets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Andy Skeets, Westmoors and Three-Legged Cross. Part of my questions have been answered already by previous councillors raising it. So it leaves me sort of to pick up the other pieces, which were there was an increased risk in flooding and the area had been determined a risk, 100-year risk, I think you said. And it looked as if it went right up to the building. So I'm just a bit concerned on the impact of the flooding, not on this particular property, probably, because it would be raised up and out the way, but with the existing bungalow to one side and the other bungalows near it. I'm a bit concerned about the impact of the flooding and whether that can be mitigated within this scheme and how deep the plan is to show that mitigation. And the other point was you said that some of the detail on, I think you said screening and planting, etc., was open and not actually stated. Is that right? Given the fact that it's an area, a special character area, and there are neighbouring dwellings, I think I would have liked to have seen that within the scheme and controlled, so the contractor and the developer have to do it, and it's not just at their choice or something they decide not to do in the future. That would make me feel more comfortable.
Through you, Chair. In terms of the question about flood risk, this has been part of the reason why the application has taken so long to come before you. So this sort of blob here is the Environment Agency's high-level calculations of where they can identify the opportunity for surface water risk based on topography. And it's not something that we should use site-specific, but we use it to give us an idea about where we should be looking for more detail. So that has then informed a site-specific check of topography levels, where it's likely to flood, and the flood risk assessment has come back and said that there is the potential for some flood risk on the site of a maximum of 10 centimetres, and we can avoid this from being an issue through our drainage scheme. So at the moment, obviously the water is just falling onto the garden, which is relatively undeveloped and sinking away. So the intention is to improve that almost greenfield runoff, although it's brownfield, to ensure that the water is managed appropriately. So it will be a mix of ensuring that the levels on the site mean that any exceedance flow, so anything that can't be caught by the drainage, is managed in a way that avoids harm to the neighbouring amenity and to anybody who's living in those flats in the future. And but the council's flood risk assessor, flood risk engineer, has looked at all the workings that have been undertaken by the flood risk consultant, and is satisfied that those can meet what's necessary to avoid flood risk. In terms of the landscaping, thank you. So condition 5 will secure details of the landscaping, and I've suggested an informative note mentioning the white beam, but the landscaping will need to ensure that it accords with the ecological details that have already been provided, which show new hedging, new tree planting. So all those will then need to go into the planting plans, which is what we're missing at the moment. So we'll secure those through the condition.
Supplementary, please. Thank you. So just a supplementary question then. So given the fact that that condition exists, that will be agreed prior to commencement?
Yes, prior to works above damp course level.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes, happy. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Robinson, Ferndown South. But two of my questions have already been asked by Councillor Coombs and Councillor Florrick. Parking spaces. Is there any visitor parking spaces, or is that the two that were in orange?
Chair. So it's all unallocated. So it's 10 spaces that anybody could use if they're free.
Right. So there's no extra.
No extra.
Right. My other question is there definitely going to be a construction management plan in place? Because the amount of complaints that I do receive when works are going on properties in Golf Links Road.
Through you, Chair. So condition 4 requires that a construction method statement be submitted prior to commencement of development, and that is to include routing of construction delivery vehicles and parking of vehicles, parking of the vehicles of site operatives and visitors. So they will need to have thought through where they're parking, and there may still be some parking on the highway. But I was encouraged by the agent suggesting that parking could take place on site as well.
Thank you for that.
Okay, Councillor Ezard.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beryl Ezard, Wareham Ward. I might have missed it, but what size is the plot and is it level? That's what I'd like to know, because I just want to know about the landscaping and shared area for amenity outside. So what is the size, please?
And so the plot size for each is 0.15 hectares, and the amenity space, so part of it would be private, and then this area at the back would be public. So there's an area here which is a patio, which may or may not be used for washing lines or that kind of thing, and then there's a little bit of communal space, but it's relatively limited.
So can I supplementary, please? There's no particular garden areas for the flat, for separate flats. It's all shared area. Is that it?
Through you, Chair. So the two rear flats at ground floor level would have their own amenity space in these areas.
Can we see that?
I'll try and find you a bigger.
Sorry.
That one. Yeah. So the way that the landscaping is shown here, and this on the plan that's proposed to be approved, is that this flat number 4, I think it is, would have its own little amenity space out the back here. This flat would have a small amenity space, and then there would be a shared communal area with access to storage spaces here, and cycle store in the back.
Another supplementary.
Yeah.
When you say you've got the storage space at the back, where are the bins and where is the actual access that the DWP will be picking up the bins? Which area? Thank you.
Yeah. So the bin store is at the front here, and then it's less than 10 metres to the highway from the bin store. So the waste collection team are satisfied with that arrangement.
So answer your questions.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brenton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brenton, Litchfield Upton. I might have missed it, but it said in the ModGov bit that there was going to be a bee loft on top of the bin store or something like that. I'm quite concerned that this bungalow was reported to have had bees in it,
attic, and therefore a cycle store there's going to be quite a high cycle store. Most bat boxes and such like are far too low, generally speaking. So just slapping one on a bin store sounds a little bit basic and highly unlikely to be used. So could I have a little bit more information about this bat roost? Oh, it's in the cycle store, not the bin store. Okay. But where are they going to be? How high are they? Same thing with Swift bricks. At what level are they? I just find it a bit, well, we're going to make them homeless, but we're going to stick a few little bits up and that will keep them happy. Because the most important things about bats, and it says so in the report, is the foraging flight. Well, they're going to have to take quite a bit of a detour now, aren't they, to go round this big building. So I'm a bit concerned about the soft landscaping, obviously. And, you know, where are they going to forage? Because new landscaping is not going to be wild and interesting. It's going to be small patches of grass and a few pretty flowers, isn't it? So I'd like a little bit more explanation on that.
Yes.
Through you, Chair. So as part of the application, the applicant has submitted an ecological impact assessment, which has gone through the NET certification process, and they have identified that the roof of the cycle store can be used as a bat roost. That there are opportunities for the sparrow terraces, the bat tubes, and the Swift bricks on the building. They are shown illustratively on this plan, I admit. And if you wish, we could add some additional informative about the location, but there is more information within the ecology report, which I anticipate would be taken into account because the condition itself doesn't just refer to this plan, but refers to the whole of the assessment that was done, which identifies where these mitigation measures should be located. I'm sorry, I can look it up for you now if you would prefer.
I read it earlier. I mean, I read it yesterday, so yeah, but I can't remember it all, I'm afraid. And I still thought it was a little bit basic, their options. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bryan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Ray Bryant, representing the ward of London and St Ives, which is within the neighbouring area. So obviously I have a particular interest in this sort of application. I refer you to page 16, item 4, where it quite clearly states this area is described in the special character area supplementary planning document as being characterised by detached 2 or single-storey single-family dwellings set back behind established buildings, lines in large or very large plots. I'm slightly confused as to that being the special character area, and we're now looking at what is actually a 3-storey building. And is it possible for you to bring up the slide which showed the other areas where development has already been permitted along that particular road? You had a very good slide which showed where they all are. Sorry to do that to you. Where the stars are. Yeah, I mean, my concern is that where we're building, where we're allowing buildings that probably aren't within the special character area rulings, but further down Golf Links Road, I see there are several that are all joined together, so it probably defeats my question, because I've watched the change in this road over the last few years, and it really is a concern for the local residents who bought with the perception that this is semi-protected by the special character area. But obviously that's probably not a planning condition. So if I can just refer to a couple of other points through you, Chair, if I may. Flooding is a big concern there, because I've actually seen the flooding So whilst the environmental agency are saying it's a 1 in 100 years, I think if you talk to the locals, they'll tell you that it's substantially more than that. So I would like to see somewhere a condition put in which makes sure that we're not making it even worse. Because where you take a bungalow away and you place it with a big building, you're covering a far larger ground mass, which means the possibility of flooding is therefore increased. So I'd like us to consider some form of condition in there which says that they've got to get approval for whatever flooding mitigation they're going to bring in, because I don't see that in the report anywhere. And sorry, I'm getting corrected by my colleague on my right, but that's fine. I'm learning. So I would like to I'd like something put in there which forces that. Where the area is, and I use that road quite regularly, not to go to the golf club every yet, but use the area quite regularly. It's quite close to the junction with the Ringwood Road, and people come off the Ringwood Road at a fair speed because it's and you have a very limited space where there will be, whether we think it's relevant, there will be a number of cars parked there because there aren't enough parking spaces, because most of those flats will have 2 cars. But I understand that's in our rules, so I'm not querying that. But I'm concerned about the parking in that particular area because it is very close to that junction. Unless you've actually been to the area, you probably don't understand. But as you swing off the Ringwood Road, you're trying to move along fairly quickly, so that the cars coming behind you. So that's a concern to me. And if I can just ask one more question, if I may, Chair. The windows are obscure. What's the prevention in, at a later stage, changing those windows to normal windows? Is there a restriction in there that will give the enforcement team some strength if that was to happen? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Liz.
Good, Chair. So in terms of surface water management, yeah, it's really important that we get something that works. So condition 3 requires detailed surface water management scheme prior to commencement of development, because we could potentially have conditioned what we've got, but it's only preliminary. So we want to give them the opportunity to really finesse it, make sure it's up to speed and get that agreed. And that will be checked with the council's flood risk management team. And then in terms of the highway safety, yes, I agree with you. Coming off Ringwood Road, you do want to keep the speed up, but actually it is a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit along that road, and the property is about 100 metres down. So I think, although it's not a very not very welcomed, there is always the position that actually sometimes a parked car can slow traffic, which is positive for safety. So I mean, and I would anticipate that is why at the moment the yellow lines have never been identified as necessary on the site, although that is a separate matter. So if there were concerns that, you know, as a result of development along the road there was highway parking which was causing highway safety issues, then yeah, that's something to be looked at outside of the planning assessment through the town council going to Dorset Council Highways team. The condition would require that the parking remains unallocated, which should give more flexibility on how that is used. And the third thing I think was about obscure glazing. So condition 12 requires that the windows should be retained in accordance with the condition 12, which identifies which are to be obscured, and they should either be fixed shut, or we should have a scheme to show how they can be hung in a way that means that they don't then overlook, because there are options for including restrictors for windows that need to provide ventilation.
Good. If I may, Chair, one further observation. You mentioned earlier on the grass verge outside the property. I presume that grass verge is Dorset Council land. so that won't be available for parking. You've nodded in agreement, so I'm happy to let that go. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Do we have anyone else who wants to speak, to offer anything up for debate, or ask any further questions? Because if not, then I think we need to go to a vote. I don't know if that's all. Is your hand raised, David, or is it simply resting in the air? Thank you.
I'll put the microphone on for effect. Councillor Morgan, representing the beautiful town of Wimborne. I jotted down here quite a few things which, as I expected, have all been answered quite satisfactorily. First of all, we have the flood risk. That seems to have been dealt with in some ways. The overlooking, we've dealt with the overlooking which could occur, but there are other flats in that area. Traffic parking, we've done that, being on the road. The other complaint was that it didn't meet the special character. Well, I think some attempt, as Liz has said, that there is some way in which that has been partly overcome. And of course, knowing Golf Links Road building is inappropriate in the area with lots of single dwellings and bungalows, but then there are other flats. In fact, I understand there's a block of flats next door to where we're intending to build. And the ecosystem that's been mentioned. So I think, Mr. Chairman, we seem to have covered at this stage anyway most of the queries that we might have. And now we come to the vote.
Would you care to make a proposal?
Yes, okay, as you were pushing me. Yeah, I'd like to propose that we accept the application.
Councillor Robinson, is that a seconder?
Yes, it is, Chairman. I'd like to second that.
Thank you.
And can I just there's the A and B. So I'm confused with this 1.6 isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. So the recommendation we have is, let's just put it properly. So the recommendation is to delegate authority to the Corporate Director for Planning, Service Manager for Development Management and Enforcement, or the Eastern Team Development Management Area Manager to grant, subject to completion of a legal agreement for the Section 106 for the New Forest SAMM mitigation at £400 a unit, and the following conditions shown in the report. Or if that Section 106 agreement isn't made, to then refuse on the grounds that it doesn't comply. So that's the proposal and that's the second. Are we clear? Happy with those? Yeah. Okay. Any other comments before we move to a vote, or shall we?
Just an observation, Chairman. Councillor Coons-Lowood Ward. It's not a perfect design or a perfect application. There are some question marks still. However, the precedent has already been set in Golf Links Road. We are setting planning committee for many years, discussing each of these as they come forward. So I'm well aware of the history on it. If we decide not to support this and go to the applicant went to appeal, I don't think we'll be able to sustain an objection to it. So bearing all of those in mind, I will slightly reluctantly, but I will be supporting the proposal on the table.
Thank you. So they, anyone else? No? Councillor Brent.
It's just a comment, Councillor Brenton, Upton. It's just a comment. I quite like the design of the property. It does fit in. I can see that it's acceptable in planning terms, but I do raise a pointer that these bungalows with large plots have been a very important part of our biodiversity catalogue for Dorset. And as we're gradually knocking them out, the new garden may be amenity space, but it doesn't do anything for biodiversity or nature reclamation or any of those issues which we keep going on about. So I am concerned about this trend, but I see it's a trend that's happening.
Actually, if there's no further comments, go to the vote. So what's been proposed, as we've discussed, is as per the recommendation. All those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 9 for. All those against? 1. Any abstentions? So that's carried 91. So P Full 2023 07270 12 Golf Links Road, Ferndown, BH22 8BY has been approved as per recommendation. Thank you. We have a small hiatus now whilst the officers swap around, and I think, are you waiting until the presentation or are you moving now?
Depends how long the break is. Might for you, right? But you said a hiatus.
Hiatus,
Right. Hiatus.
It's a hiatus, not a home.
Yeah, please.
Very pleasing to know.
On 8, we're not going to get anything.
That's all H, Chair.
Apologies, there is a technical confidential.
What's this? That one took an hour, the next one should not take an hour. Even for lunch.
Oh, yeah. That's all.
That's good if they choose to use them so often, don't they? Because they feel wrong.
That looks like success.
Sorry about that delay.
Right. Next item on the agenda is item 6. Is P Full 2025 06825 Springdale Road, Corfmullen, BH21 3QN. Presented by James Brightman. My vice chairman and one of the other members, Councillor Scott Florek, are predetermined on this, and so I've gone to sit with the public in the gallery. They will speak later, and then they will leave the building. Leave the room.
Your boom.
They can stay in the wall. So if we start off, we've got James, do you want to do the presentation?
Thank you, Chair.
We'll look at the public speakers. Thank you.
Good morning, members. This application is for the change of use of the existing bungalow and its curtilage to an early years children's day nursery. No external changes are proposed to the bungalow. The application is before the planning committee at the request of the chairman. The site lies approximately 50 metres to the east of the mini roundabout that joins Springdale Road, Wareham Road and Froud Way. Wareham Road joins the Port of Blandford Road to the south and Corfmullen and Wimborne beyond to the north. Springdale Road joins Broadstone to the east. The site is predominantly residential and has dwellings on 3 of its boundaries. Upton Heath is some 35 metres to the south across Springdale Road. These recent photos show the site's context. You can see the bungalow set back from the road and the driveway serving as an access. There's a continuous hedge across the frontage and a secondary access is proposed at a later date, roughly in the area where the car is parked on the street. The proposed parking plan shows existing access onto Springdale Road retained and 7 on-site spaces proposed. The drop to curb area for the existing access is not to be widened, but there will be a short distance of hedge removed on the Springdale Road boundary to allow the access to be widened. The access road, not the highway access, together with the removal of the low hedge, which is just inside the site on the east of the existing driveway to allow the parking. New hard surfacing for parking at the front of the bungalow would replace the grassed area here. The rear spaces will be for staff. There's a temporary space for the nursery minibus to the south of space 1 during the working day, and this will be parked in spaces 1 to 3 out of hours at the rear of the block. The cycle store is shown to the east of the existing dwelling. Vehicles delivering and collecting children can use the space at the front of the bungalow. The outside play area is to the east and northeast of the bungalow. You can see it shown shaded in green. This has a boundary with 166 Springdale Road and will be enclosed with a 1.8 high acoustic fence. The nursery will accommodate up to 24 children at a time, with 16 aged 2 to 5 and 8 under 2s. In terms of the principle of the development, this is acceptable as the site is in a main settlement with access and services and public transport close by, and officers consider it accords with Core Strategy Policy KS2. Core Strategy Policy LN7 is also supportive of the proposal as it would provide a facility or service to support existing and future population growth within a settlement where access can be by public transport, cycle or on foot. In terms of highway safety, there's been concern raised by both ward members and 2 members of the public. And in response to this, the applicant has submitted a traffic management plan and also advised that around 75% of drop-off and collections of children will be staggered, which will prevent concentrated traffic increase in the area. And 7 siblings also attend the nursery. There are staff children who will arrive and leave with a staff member. Drop-off and collection is at the front door, so the turnaround is quite quick, with parents not having to enter the building. Parents will be advised to use the allocated parking bays for drop-off and collection, and an allocated time is given for drop-off and collection. The preschool and after-school clubs, the children will leave and return in the nursery minibus. The nursery is also encouraging active travel, recommending parents in the immediate area walk to the site, with visit to the nursery not promoted, which will minimise the traffic movements. Visibility from the existing access is acceptable and it will be wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass. Springdale Road is for the majority of the extent free from parking restrictions, so it would allow on-street parking for proposed use. Council's highways engineer has raised no objection, given information on how the nursery is to be operated in relation to traffic movements. But to ensure the nursery is operating in accordance with the traffic management principles set out by the applicant, officers consider it necessary to impose a condition to require the nursery to operate in accordance with the submitted traffic management plan. Given the no objection from Council Highways engineer, and in the light of the information provided by the applicant on how the nursery is to be operated in relation to traffic movements, it's considered the proposal would not result in an adverse impact on highway safety. There is a new access to serve spaces 4 and 5, but this is proposed at a later date and not to be carried out if permission is granted immediately. And this is officers consider this acceptable, subject to a condition to require it to be constructed to accord with highway standards. To ensure the nursery is operating in accordance with the traffic management principles, we've done that, sorry. The proposed new access to serve spaces 4 and 5 will require this additional condition, which is before the new access hereby approved is first used, the first 5 metres of the vehicular access, measured from the near side edge of the carriageway, including the visibility space, shall have been laid out, constructed and surfaced to the specification which should have been submitted to and agreed in writing by the local planning authority. This is a condition that's standard to highways, and the planning officers have considered this acceptable. Moving on to the impact on the living conditions of the neighbouring properties. The site, as previously stated, the site is immediately adjacent to dwellings at 166, 170 and 177 Springdale Road. And also there are dwellings to the north in Victoria Close, 49 and 54 to 54. There will be some noise from the use of the outside play area from the children playing and making their various noises, and from the coming and goings to include traffic, and will have an impact on occupants of these adjacent properties. So noises from outdoor play, vehicle movements and the occasional delivery will be the source. And the noise impact assessment has been submitted, which evaluates that impact. And it states that predicted noise levels demonstrate that with mitigation, impacts will be within acceptable residential thresholds. Outdoor play will only be within the secure boundary fenced area at the rear and side garden, which will be surrounded by an acoustic fence to reduce the noise levels. The proposed noise mitigation measures from the applicant are set out in the noise impact assessment, which also contains a noise management plan. So we have staff supervised sessions with a maximum of 10 children at any one time, with morning sessions restricted to between 9:30 and 11:30, afternoon 2 till 5, and they'll be staggered to reduce the number of children outdoors at any one time. There will be no static play equipment, climbing frames and such. There'll be a complaint response procedure on the company's terms and conditions that can be accessed by their website and Facebook. No amplified sound equipment and implementation of the noise management plan. The council's environmental protection officers considered the noise management plan and the mitigation measures offered, and they consider that with a condition imposed to require the nursery to operate in accordance with the noise management plan and limit the number of children playing outside at any one time to 10, the proposal accords with our policy, saved policy DEDS 2, which is criteria for development to avoid unacceptable impacts from types of pollution. Another condition will be imposed, is suggested, to prevent a change of use of the premises to another use under the same Class E of the Town and Country Planning Use Classes Order, so the council have control over the next use in the interest of the neighbours. In respect to the impact of the character of the area, the bungalow will see no outward changes proposed, and the existing boundary treatments are to be largely retained, so the only impacts on character will be parked vehicles within the site and from vehicles associated with drop-offs and pickups. The existing approximately 1.8 metre high hedge on the site's front boundary of Springdale Road would help screen some of the on-site parking spaces, and the existing bungalow would screen those at the rear. And with a new access in the future to serve spaces 4 and 5, there'll be a bit more visibility of parking, but it's at quite a low level, and officers don't consider that would be adverse in its impact. The other boundary vegetation adjacent to the adjacent buildings and the proposed fencing on the other site boundaries will screen parked vehicles when seen from adjacent land. And the applicant has agreed with the landscaping pre-commencement condition. On this basis, there will be no adverse impact on the street scene or the character of the area, and the proposal accords with core strategy policy HE2. Protected heathland, as I said, lies to the south, very close, Upton Heath. The council's environmental assessment team has looked at it and carried out a screening opinion under the habitats regulations and concluded it would not have the use would not have an adverse impact on the protected heathlands. It's also interesting to note that Dorset Heathlands planning framework doesn't only relate really to residential uses, that doesn't cover this particular use. So for the above mentioned reasons, the proposal is recommended for approval by officers and would provide an early years facility in a sustainable location, and no harmful impacts have been identified to highway safety, immunity of occupants of adjacent dwellings, the character of the area, or protected heathlands. And the proposal is considered to comply with the development plan as a whole, and Commission recommended to be granted subject to these 12 conditions, which are set out in the officer report. Please note the additional condition 12, which I referred to earlier. That concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James. Excuse me. We've got a number of public speakers on this. The first one is an objection from Elsa Wilson. Elsa, if you come to the front desk, the microphone, there'll be a little button on it with a picture of a mum speaking. If you press that, and you get 3 minutes. Okay, are you ready?
Okay. Good morning. My name is Elsa Wilson. My address is 170 Springdale Road. We've lived in the property approximately a month, and in that short space of time, we have come to understand the hazards, the traffic hazards that Springdale Road will undoubtedly impact people coming and going from that property in volume. You've already mentioned poor visibility on Springdale Road, the hedges coming out of any of those properties along the road. There are concealed entrances, which makes it very difficult to get out of that drive, especially within proximity of the roundabout. The speed of traffic that comes off that roundabout is not within the highway code, I'll put it that way. So vehicles coming out of those entrances, you have to inch into the carriageway to have a clear line of sight to be able to see whether there is any oncoming traffic. As a pedestrian, if there is a van parked on the left, I actually have to go maybe 3-4 meters into the road to be able to check whether there is any clear, whether the road is clear or whether there's any traffic coming. The speed coming up from Broadstone, because traffic is coming out of the traffic controlled area, people floor it because it's a long straight piece of road, and it is it's notorious for speeding. Within first days, we had some extremely high speeds coming up that road. It's wholly inappropriate to put an early year setting facility at that particular point along that road. I think, very poor driving behaviour. I've been in the road with a dog and have had to run across the road because people will not slow. They'll expect you to step back. Either that, they'll swerve round you, which it's a little. It's not a safe place, and that's the main objection that I have. When you have parked vehicles along the road, it's impossible to. 30 seconds, okay. So I've seen a child knocked down outside Longfleet Road. That has speed bumps, 20-mile-an-hour limit. The the trauma and the catastrophe that caused that family, you have to go into this with lived experience and reality of what you are asking parents to do. And those 2 parking spaces aren't going to mitigate it.
Thank you very much indeed. The next public speaker is the applicant, Paul Spencer. So again, Paul, if you follow the established pattern.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I am here to represent Minnie Munchkin's Day Nursery. The nursery was established in 2019 in Corfmullen and quickly earned itself an excellent reputation within the community. However, it became apparent that the current setting could not support the increasing numbers of applicants for childcare, and along with recent changes to government funding for children, we knew we needed to expand. After a request to use additional rooms within the current setting was rejected, we decided to start to search for a second setting within the community. We want to remain within a catchment area, and finding a suitable property is more difficult than we initially thought. 168 Springdale Road is perfect for our requirements. Internally, the changes were minimal, but outside we will be fencing off the nursery for both sound and acoustic reasons and security, using acoustic fencing where required. The play area will be grass and not concrete to reduce sound impacts. There will not be any fixed play equipment. Outside activities will be organised alongside inside activities to stagger the number of children outside, and staffing levels will always comply with the EYFS. The rear and side of the property will be used for parking and a drop-off zone. Security, access for children will only be through a staff-controlled locked front entrance, and staff will enter through the rear for access-controlled gates and doors. Openings will be weekdays only, no weekends or bank holidays, and all children will have left by 6 p.m. Preschool club will not be permitted outside play. Outside play will be limited to 10 children within the agreed hours. Noise pollution control will always be implemented, and we have a noise complaints form if ever needed. We are aware there have been concerns regarding the impact of the road with potential increased traffic. We already implement a staggered drop-off and collection routine for parents, encourage car sharing and walk to nursery policy, which we will continue at the second setting. We also have our dedicated minibus for school, preschool and after-school collections. Also, to draw traffic away from the roundabout, we would propose to implement a left turn only to exit the property from the nursery. We would install fully compliant signage with highways requirements and highlight this in all documents and policies. This would take traffic away from the roundabout, either by travelling left out of the nursery down the next road, Ivor Road, or continuing along Springdale Road towards Broadstone. Parking on the main road would not be encouraged, but it is already used regularly for parking, so we cannot enforce this. Parents will be advised to use drop-off zones on the premises, not only to ensure the road is not congested, but also for safety, to ensure children exit vehicles safely within our setting.
30 seconds.
We have dedicated parking at the rear of the property for staff and the drop-off zones for parents at the front. We can always be contacted through our Facebook page or websites. Appointments can be made to speak in person, but we cannot allow off-road invitations due to safeguarding. All complaints will be dealt with by management, and all paperwork will be reported and sent to relevant persons in the event of any complaints. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak.
Thank you. We have public speakers, local ward members, Councillor Johnson Surrey House.
Thank you, Chair.
Minutes.
I respectfully request the committee refuse application P4 2025-06825. This is not about whether childcare is needed. It clearly is. The question is whether this site can safely accommodate this use. The evidence shows it cannot. The proposal introduces a nursery for up to 24 children plus staff into a modest residential plot. That inevitably creates and intensifies peak time traffic. We're told arrivals will be staggered and quick, but in reality, parents arrive at similar times, before and after work, and that leads to clustering. The clustering results in vehicles stopping unpredictably, reversing and turning, in constrained space, and informal parking along the road. Springdale Road is a relatively quiet residential street, not designed for this level of activity, with the exception of Julia's house, further down Springdale Road, where there have been a number of accidents and a fatality where parked cars were a significant contributor. The applicant refers to a drop-off area and potential traffic management, but this is not robustly evidenced. It's not secured in detail, and it depends heavily on behaviour rather than enforceable design. The likely outcome is overspill parking, blocked driveways, and reduced visibility. And there is a further critical issue here: public transport. This section of Springdale Road already experiences constraints for bus movements, including parked vehicles and restricted carriageway width. Additional short stay, stopping and turning traffic will delay buses, obstruct their passage and undermine reliability at precisely the busiest parts of the day. That directly conflicts with NPPF objective of supporting sustainable transport, and we should not be approving development that makes bus services less reliable and less attractive. And finally, the safety risk. This is traffic interacting with very young children who are small, unpredictable and vulnerable. The combination of manoeuvring vehicles, obstructed footways and constrained highway conditions creates a situation of unacceptable risk. Paragraph 111 of the NPPF is clear. Development should be refused where there is an unacceptable impact on highway safety. That threshold is met, and policies KS11 and KS12 require safe access and protection of the transport network, including public transport. This proposal fails both of those tests. So, Committee on Highways, Safety and Sustainable Transport grounds, I urge refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Last public speaker on this is again the ward member, Councillor Scott Florick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. I will focus on amenity, noise, character, and the cumulative impact of this proposal. The applicant suggests noise would be minimal, comparable to a family home. This is simply not realistic. This is not a single household. It is a nursery, up to 24 children, staff, and continuous daily turnover. We must consider the real world experience for residents. First, outdoor noise. Groups of children playing throughout the day create continuous and cumulative sound, not occasional domestic noise. Second, traffic-related disturbance. The applicant notes quick turnover and staggered arrivals, but in practice, this still means parents arriving at similar times, conversations at the entrance, doors, engines, and repeated movement. This happens every day, morning and afternoon. Third, the wider street impact. Residents already experience pressure on parking, constrained movements. Additional stopping traffic contributes to congestion, delay, and disruption to passing vehicles, including buses. So this is not isolated noise. It is a cumulative impact on how the street functions. Fourth, intensification of use. This is a key planning issue. We are moving from a residential dwelling to a high turnover commercial use. This fundamentally changes activity levels, noise patterns, and the character of the area. Springdale Road is a quiet residential street. Policy ME1 requires protection of that amenity, and the NPPF paragraph 92 requires places that support health, well-being, and quality of life. Persistent disturbance and erosion of residential character does not meet that test. When everything is considered together, highway safety risks, risks to pedestrians, pressure on public transport, and sustained noise and disturbance, the harm is clear and demonstrable. In those circumstances, the policy position is straightforward. Permission should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. James, do you have any responses to anything that we've heard?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of highway safety issues, officers have considered those points in the report and in the assessment. The highways officer has been out and will assess the scheme and provide quite a comprehensive response, especially on driver behaviour. But the conclusion from those assessments is that we as officers don't think we can support a refusal on the basis of highway safety. In terms of the immediacy, there will be noise. Our environmental protection officer considers that the noise management mitigation is sufficient to keep that noise to a level that's not harmful to the occupants of the adjacent properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Do we have any questions? Okay, I've got Councillor Skeets, Councillor Coombs, and Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Concerned about the noise. Significant noise from 24 young people at a nursery is far different than for a property that lives next door to another family. There is no way I can even conceive that noise level wouldn't be so excessive that it would impact on the local neighbours. And I would, if you've got any more information other than a 1.8 to 2 metre acoustic fence, then I'd like to hear it. So that's my first question. This also gives us another issue that isn't raised in this report as far as I can see, and that is that should we allow this, then we of course increase our housing need by 1, because we lose a property that can be habitated in an environment where it is, as it's been described by the local members and people that know it well, as a fairly quiet area of residential use. So that's a significant change. I admit I know that Julia's house is a bigger complex, which is further down the road, but that's a long way from this actual application. I think the impact on the local environment and the character, I would need some more information, and I'm not convinced that the local impact and character wouldn't be clearly destroyed by, or the environment for living would be completely destroyed by the impact of this particular development. In terms of parking, parents are what they are, and as it happens, I live near a school, so I'm well aware, as everyone else is, that parents really take little consideration of what's going on drives and any other restrictions when they're dropping off their little ones to school and rushing off to work, even if it is staggered. Actually, the other question, the staggering that we've suggested, that impacts on the buses. So it actually impacts for a longer period of time in terms of this actual application. So I'm not convinced that the impact on the local transport wouldn't be negative either. And I think I'd better leave it there. I've probably got a few more questions, but I need some information that may change what I feel at the moment. But I leave it to you, Mr. Officer, to convince me. But I think you can have a bit of a job.
Thank you, indeed. Do you have a response to that?
Chair, I'll try to shed some light on it. In terms of the noise management, the applicant has said, in addition to the acoustically fenced outside play area, the main method of controlled noise would be supervision. So you've got up to 10 children at any one time, and the early years requirements are a certain ratio of staff per child, with the more staff, the younger the child, the more staff required. So there'll be a lot of staff. And so it's an early years, so it's 2 to 5, and some babies under 2. So those sort of children aren't like your secondary schools or your primary schools, the noise you get from there. speaking from experience living near a primary and secondary school. So it's a different level of noise, but yes, noise nonetheless. No static play equipment, which can be noisy, the use of that. No amplified music. If they have to sing on sessions outside, there's none of the amplified music going on to reduce noise. They have a complaint form procedure. So if a neighbour wants to get involved, they can. And there should be the responsibility as a nursery to be a good neighbour. In terms of the hours, the outdoor play only will occur between 9:30 and 11, and then 2 till 5 on weekdays only. So it's a limited time during the week. That is the play. But we accept that there's noise from the comings and goings. But it's not 24 children sounds a lot, but it's not compared to the school. And in practice, officers consider that it will not be as bad as everyone turning at one time and dropping off their children. And there's a potential for that, but given the staggered drop-offs, the applicant is proposing to reduce that. And presumably with the experience of the existing nursery, they'll know about how that works.
And may I come back, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, briefly.
As it happens, in my village or town now, as they call it, in Moorside Road, we've got a property which was developed as a nursery some years ago. It formerly was a house, then it became a dentist, and because a dentist, I think, was in the same coding as a nursery, permission was allowed on that site. I've, over the years, got considerable complaints about noise. It's a similar situation and similar number of young people. They have issues with noise from the young people themselves. They have parking issues all of the time, and the impact on the local environment is pretty significant. So I don't think what you've explained to me answers my question really, but I accept they are what you said.
Thank you, Councillor Skeets. I've got Councillor Coombs next.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Sophie Coombs of Irwood Ward. I have the dubious pleasure of having had a nursery fairly recently built within my ward, which we turned down at committee and was one on appeal. It's on a roundabout on an access to two schools which sit side by side on a campus. And we had all of the issues about noise and disturbance. And I have to say, I'm not aware of any complaints. It has settled in really well, and it's twice the size of this one. Talking about the mitigation, I see there is the acoustic fencing condition. Can we ensure that we have the specification of that? Because when Littles went in Burwood, we didn't have any specification, and the developer just put in an ordinary fence. But because the plans didn't specify what it was going to be, we couldn't get that altered. So it's about belt and braces, making sure that we've got the proper specification of what that acoustic fencing should be. The other thing, learning from that nursery, is that the outdoor play area had a rubber crumb surface for the children to play on, because that helped reduce the noise. So if I can have some idea from officers about whether we can put that in as a condition, what sort of area is that play area to be, just again thinking about containment of noise. I was going to ask whether it was an existing building, and the applicant obviously dealt with that because I did pick up in the presentation that it talked about that some of the children were siblings, so that would reduce the number of vehicles. But of course, as time goes on, there may or may not be siblings. So I'll sort of park that to one side. But the other main question I've got is, I understand the fact that it's a business and there's therefore no heathland impact. However, I want to know how close the building is to be protected heathland, because I have another property in my ward which was converted to business use from residential and now can never be converted back because it's within 500 metres of the heathland. So I just want to understand the impact of that on the future use of the property, because if we lose the residential, it becomes business property. Can it ever go back because of the 500 metre rule?
Okay, through you, Chair. Just go and take the question about loss of a dwelling, which Councillor Skeets mentioned earlier. Didn't answer that. There's no policy to prevent the dwelling being lost. You're quite right. This one would be the case, as you mentioned, it's within 400 metres of the heath. It's only about 35 metres. So if it did go back now, got implemented, and then it came in for a dwelling, we would resist that. In terms of your point about the acoustic fencing, in the noise impact assessment they submitted, at the back, you haven't seen it, but there's a specification for the acoustic fencing, and I've got on the screen a little picture of the specific fence with the technical spec there, and there's a condition in the officer report to require the noise impact assessment to be carried out, which is number 4. So that would condition that aspect.
I just wanted confirmation of those, but also about a rubber crumb surface.
We have a landscaping condition, and we could make that a bit more specific to require details of the place surfacing to be agreed. That sort of surface. The applicant did mention it to be grass, but in terms of control, we could get that agreed. We could put it as an informative note to go with the landscape condition.
Are you happy with that as an informative note rather than a condition?
I'm happy, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Robinson next.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robinson, Fandam South. I'm hoping you can help me out here. If we can go to slide 4, which shows the site context, I'm a bit baffled. Can you explain to me? Right, the top slide, sorry, the top picture, that shows the actual site of 168, yeah?
Yeah.
That hedging that is bordering the footpath, is that staying?
Through you, Chair. Most of it is staying. A little bit, if you see where the access is currently positioned, there's a bit to the right of that which will be coming out to make it wider, because the access is going to be 6 metres wide. And that particular part of the site will then, with the hedge behind it, go. And then further down the site, on the bottom photograph, roughly where the cars park, I suppose, or maybe a bit further towards us, is going to be the new aperture for the 2 parking spaces, 4 and 5. So the majority of the hedge will stay, but not all.
Thank you. So the side bit is going to be removed and the access is going to be made wider. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And this new access for the parking spaces.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. You happy with that?
Yes, I am.
Yep. Councillor Izzard.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Beryl Izzard, Wareham Ward. I'm very familiar with this road, and it is a 30-mile limit. And like everywhere else, you know, people should keep within the speed limit of that mini roundabout. It's quite a tricky road. I mean, I visit Julia's house and I have to park outside and for that. So there's no parking for anyone in there because I'm a patron of that. But so I would say also that as the gentleman said, this is very needed, required, because it's an increasing number of children or nursery children needing spaces, and they need to expand. So in this setting, and I must say in Wareham, I have 2 in very similar settings to this. One very near where I live, which has a very similar setting as this, a bungalow with front parking, off the road, and it doesn't cause too much problems at all. It's on a 30-mile an hour road, and it works very well. It's also visited it a couple of times, and we've had no complaints from neighbours about the children making noise. And remember, they are mitigating that by saying only 10 children at a time outside. And remember, you've got very little young babies making up the number that they've got there as well. So it's only 18 children that would be outside. And actually, some of the neighbours are saying we enjoy hearing the children actually playing and laughing and everything. So it's really nice, like seeing them going along the road and they're like a little crocodile with their high vis jackets on when they go and visit play park and things like that. And in fact, it's actually been good for the locality, because it's like here, as shown in Springdale Road, a lot of people and parents would live along that road, and they would be able to walk there rather than have to drop the children off. They have made provision for parking and turning round in front of the bungalow, and provision for their staff at the back. So that shouldn't make too much of a problem. And so I would say that all in all, I would think this was very acceptable, especially as, children and families are desperate to place their children in nurseries. And this will make a really good provision for that. And so I would actually really like to, propose that we accept this and take it forward, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't hear a question in that particularly, but do we have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Benton, you're seconding?
Can I say something first?
Well, I've actually got Dirty Martin as the next speaker, but if you want a second.
I would second it, but Councillor Brenton, Litchfield and Upton. Corfmullen is a very sort of strangely linear village with no desperate centre as such. The centre is really the Pool Road that goes, or the Wareham Road that goes from the roundabout up, on which there are a few shops, there are a couple of cafes. It is the one place where people sort of in Corfmullen tend to hang out a bit. There are plenty of houses which you can't see on that screen, sort of to the north and east. So there are plenty of properties within walking distance. Now, if we want to have communities where one can walk to a bus stop, to a co-op, to a nursery, then we shouldn't be stopping people putting nurseries in walking distance of other facilities. So my general feeling is that this is a good idea. I am worried by Councillor Coombs's point that once it goes commercial, it won't go back to residential. That is an issue I hadn't thought about. Thank you for that. Springdale Road isn't that bad. The issue with buses is further along, where they try to turn sharp left down into the Springdale estate at the back. And if people park on that corner, that gets very tricky. But it's not where this property is. I mean, I've got stuck there before now, waiting for a bus to be able to turn around a corner. But it isn't where this property is. The other issue, which is not been mentioned, and I don't know whether that would be part of the habits of the nursery, is of course you've got Broadstone Recreation Ground, which isn't a recreation ground. It's a great big open space where you do see groups of small children with adults playing on grass, on natural ground, on the heath. And that is within it's just across the road. So I would say, actually, this is quite a good site for this sort of development. And so I would be actually happy to say.
Thank you very much. Just to be clear, there is a new condition within the officer's report. Are you including that in your proposal and your seconding? So, Councillor Ezard first as a proposer.
Yeah, I definitely oppose granting this.
Yes, but with the new condition that was outlined at the start.
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Brenton, you're seconding,
yes,
including that. Okay, thanks. Before we move to a vote, I've got a couple more speakers who put their hand up, or three more speakers who put their hand up. So I've got, next is Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Morgan, still representing Wimborne. Yeah, how can I not speak on this? Having spent 40 years working with small children, I know exactly how they behave, and indeed the noise level. As regards the noise level, it depends obviously what they are doing. And I would assume that if they are outside, and there's only 10 of them, instead of 45 of them, then if they're well organised, perhaps with some simple games and that sort of thing, the noise level would not be as great as people fear. It's when children are allowed to sort of run riot, as it were, that we get the noise. So what have we got? We've got a bungalow to a nursery, which could remain. There's concern about noise to neighbours. We've had the road safety issue. Now, I've lived in Broadstone, or I lived in Broadstone for 25 years, so I know what Springdale Road is like. Yeah, to some extent, I can appreciate what has been said. Knowing parents, of course, they will be, if they're parking their cars, they have to be obviously extremely careful in most cases. Small children, you've got to make sure you've got hold of them securely because they have a bad habit of disappearing. And I'm sure parents will be able to do that. So I think we overcome that. And the parking, that's already been mentioned, so that can be overcome. It's not a problem. The main thing is we have so many nurseries now that are closing because of the cost, so there is a need for good nursery provision, and I was quite pleased when I saw that this application was here, because this is the kind of thing that is needed, especially for the younger children, because such a lot can be done with them before they actually get to the big school, as they would call it. And I think it, as already been said, it's a good community facility. It's what's needed. You've got Julia's house down the road, and then farther down the road, of course, you've got Springdale School. And I mean, the parents have to park in the road there. There's, 300 children in that school. So 24 is neither here nor there. I mean, most classes are 24, which is a joy. So I think, in a way, as already been said, there is a little impact on the area, and if it's well controlled, as it should be, for safety reasons, I see no reason why this nursery could not go ahead, and I would welcome the idea. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Two more speakers at the moment. I've got Councillor Bryan and Councillor Sutton. If anyone else wants to say anything. Councillor Bryan.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank the applicant for providing a much needed service for the local community and looking after the children. My question is this the right place for it? And I listened to the comments passed, when they tried to get extended use of their existing property. And I'm sad to hear they weren't able to get that, because that could have overcome the problem of them having to move at cost. I don't know the relevance. I don't know the reasons why they couldn't get permission, which is a shame because it might have had a bearing on the way we're heading. In my previous role under the previous administration, I visited this area on many an occasion because of traffic movements that the then ward members were very concerned over. It is an area where it has a history of traffic accidents. So I'm quite surprised that the highways team haven't actually raised that, because, as I say, I've spent many an hour out there with people just looking at the traffic movements and the speed at which people travel in that particular area. We ought to put a notice up which says this isn't a racetrack. It mentions the subject of the new access, and I'd be very interested as to why the new access isn't going in straight away, because it would give an in and out flow. Yeah. So that would make the traffic movement a lot easier. I'm a little bit concerned that the access is going to be put in to gain access to two new parking spaces. And what are those to be used for? Because what you don't want, if you're going to have a flow of children coming and going, you don't want to block anything up with cars being parked where they don't need to be parked. The traffic flow could happen quite well. Oh, my favourite subject, noise. This is a residential area. It says that 10 children would be out in the play area at any given time. I believe that's correct according to the report. It doesn't say how many people will be supervising those 10, because noise is going to be absolutely crucial to the local residents. And we have to, as far as I'm concerned, take into account the disturbance of the local residents. These children are 2 to 5. I don't know of a 5-year-old that actually you can control their noise, not legally anyway. But I do think it's something we need to take into consideration. I didn't see anywhere that stops the children getting out, which could end up on the road. I hear about fencing and things like that, but I didn't actually hear, and I'd like the officer to confirm, that there is secure fencing on the front, which would not allow the children to wander out of the play area towards the road. Because in my local school in St Leonard's and St Ives, we've had issues with more grown-up children than this age group, and I'm going to use the word escaping school. So I want to make sure the children can't get out onto the road, because that would be absolutely crucial. We had a mention of a left turn only that was going to be put into place potentially. If you had it in and out, you don't need to have the left turn, because you would move the out area further away from the junction, which would make it far easier to get out of. So I'd be interested. 24 children could be 24 traffic movements. That's the number that was given to us earlier on, 24 children. Some maybe 2 children in the car, but of course we have to look at the worst case scenario, which could be 24. My main concern is making sure the children are safe at all times. They're 2 to 5 years of age. That means an awful lot of control from the people operating the site. So I'd like some form of assurance that is so. We mentioned earlier on the grass play area. Well, that's very dependent on weather conditions, and my colleague to my right raised this subject, because with the weather the way it is, it'll either be muddy or rock hard. And rock hard surfaces aren't good for children of that age group, and I'm fairly sure that we don't want them covered in mud at the same time. Those are some of my concerns, Chairman, and hopefully the officers can deal with some of those and put my mind at rest.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Yes, escaping children. My dad took me to school the first day. They let us out at break time and I walked home. So, yeah, prevention of escape is quite important. Scared the mother.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Perhaps we start with the staff ratios you mentioned for the supervision. For the EYFS framework, which governs the operation of nurseries, for children under 2, 1 member of staff for every 3 children. Children aged 2, there will be 1 member for 5, and between 3 and 4, 1 member for 8. And the after school club, there'll be 1 member of staff for every 8 children, but that isn't legally required under the EYF framework. In terms of the escaping of the children, now there isn't a fence proposed on the site boundary at the front because you've got the access in, there's no gates or anything. But the plan, it's not particularly clear because the text has come out very small. There is fencing within the site around the outside play area and the storage area at the back and the parking spaces 4 and 5 at the front. So there's the red area you see there is all fenced off, or will be, to allow the children to go into that setting without having to access any of the parking areas. So the aim is that they are not going to let the children wander around in the parking and turning area and the access. It will contain the children within that red area or the building itself. In terms of the surfacing for play, which was mentioned earlier, you did say about hard in the dry weather or soft and muddy in the wet. Again, we could require or ask for details of some rubber crumb or something surfacing, some surface, and it wouldn't be muddy, but it wouldn't be hard if the children would fall on it, that sort of thing. If that was what members wanted, we could incorporate that in our landscaping condition or even a separate condition. The noise, concern about noise, we've had this raised. Again, I think it's all about supervision with these children. If they're unsupervised, they make a lot of noise. If they're not, with those ratios, quite high ratios to start, they could easily be bottomed to a suitable level with the right play structure. Does that answer?
Okay. Well, just mentioned, excuse me, you mentioned the potential of a new condition. Do you want to put that into words and see if that's something Councillor Bryan and then we can talk to the
class commencement one, or we could put it into condition 9 perhaps, which says at the moment, before the site is first used in children's day nursery, full details of both hard and soft landscape works we could put to include boundary fencing and outdoor surfaces for play within that condition. Get that agreed before they're doing the work.
Are you happy with that?
I'm happy with that, but I've still got one more point.
Okay,
I'd like
to. I'll go to the proposer in a second.
Yes, I agree with that. The surface, as a soft play area, as I think it was Councillor Humes mentioned, rubberised or whatever it is, with the usual play areas that they have for children. Yes, if you could make that a condition, that would be good. Thank you.
Okay.
I was under the impression you'd already put a sort of rider in there, but yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Ray, you had a further point wish to make?
Yeah, we haven't answered the question on the in and out, because my concern is that if there's already a car in there, somebody will pull in. They can't go anywhere else because the turning space will be allocated. So they will reverse out onto the road. So the adoption of the in and out at an early stage would alleviate some of that risk, because I wouldn't want to see cars reversing out of there when traffic is quite busy on that particular road. So is there any way in which we could even set a time limit on the provision of the in and out area?
Thank you. Is there anywhere for cars to turn around and enter and exit in 4 gear?
Through you, Chair, and we've got Susan Hetherington here today. I must clarify that before she speaks, is that this this extra access is something that planning officers have looked at, and not necessarily highways. So she's sort of speaking off the cuff now. But it's because the applicant wanted to do it in the future, they didn't want to do it now, as such, because of the costings. So the original proposal assessed on its impact without the new access, and it was okay, it was acceptable. But this new access, as Councillor Bryan said, could improve things for having in and out arrangement. So if Susan minds commenting on the safety aspects of that, just bear in mind that she's just heard about it quite recently.
Good luck, Susan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so for the Highway Authority, if it's okay, I'll take those few other points that came forward as part of the debate. So, first of all, I think there was, it's just to assure members actually that the Highway Authority always adopts a very cautious and evidence-led approach. We're typically risk-averse in assessing development proposals. There was a comment about the roundabout that's at the junction of Wareham Road, which is some 70 metres, I believe. So there is no clear pattern indicating an inherent issue with the roundabout. The additional traffic generated by this proposal will be minimal, will not materially change the conditions. And as normal, the roundabout is also subject to other reviews from other internal highway specialists. So hopefully that kind of answers that question. There was a question about, so we're talking about the existing access that was before us that's going to be utilised. So the Highway Authority are accepting of that access that will be able to accommodate the relatively low to moderate and infrequent movements. An additional access would just distribute those movements. Whilst we can't stop vehicles reversing out, they should be reversing into the minor arm of the access. So I'm not entirely sure we could put a condition forward to prevent reversing, but it is down to the highway code and drivers' due care and attention. Was there any question?
So it's just whether they could limit the times of use of that access to avoid peak traffic times. I think was a.
Yeah, it wouldn't give. We don't think it would be. It would need to be mitigated, so it probably wouldn't be suitable. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just be clear on one thing? Is there space within for cars to turn around so they can enter and exit in a forward gear? Susan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's correct. So the Highway Authority have assessed the layout and the geometry, and cars can turn in, they can move around the site and come back out in a forward gear, and all the visibility is mainly afforded within the highway extent. So vehicles can see and be seen from the access. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Suttle. Oh, sorry. Red, do you had something?
Yes, please. I'm going to be very brave because I'm going to question the highways officers on what they've just said. Probably ruin my entire reputation with the highways team, but never mind. The point I raised was if there's a car already in there and somebody arrives, there won't be room for them to do a turn to get out again. And that's my concern about them reversing out, which is why I asked whether it was possible for us to, at some stage, I think it's important that we make sure that everything is safe. And as I say, 24 movements in the space of half an hour, it is highly likely, because when you drop your children off, it's a long time since I dropped children off at nursery, but if it takes time to get them out the car, takes time to take them in, gets time to take them settled. So there is a very high likelihood of cars being parked, which won't allow the turning.
Thank you. Okay. Are responsible officers to that, or are we?
I mean, we can ask for plans to show what's called a swept path of vehicles on the site to demonstrate parking will, so turning and parking will. I mean, turning is would be effective. It's whether that's reasonable, really, I suppose. So the test for conditions, and there's no highway impact, no highway safety impact from our officer. Or perhaps there's an area to the side of the current building, which could be kept free from any parking, which is it's not shown to be parked for parking, but that is an obvious turning area. So if you came and dropped your child and then drove out, you could reverse into that, or drive into it and then reverse around the corner. So Susan, over to you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So just to provide some level of assurance, so just because there's 24 cases doesn't need to say that you're going to be getting 24 vehicular movements. They're going to be spread out. There's going to be some dwell time. So the idea that there's going to be conflict is not really there. So we're accepting that the geometry works and can accommodate those vehicular movements safely and within capacity. Thank you.
Okay. Can I go to Gary first?
Yeah, sure.
And then I'll come back to you if I can. Right. Gary.
Thank you, Chair. Gary Suttle, Swanage Ward member. My first planning meeting, so if I don't talk in planning speak, you'll either forgive me or stop me. So when I first read it, I wrote this. I wrote, great idea in completely the wrong place. Noise, road safety, residential impact, difficult conditions to enforce, need secure fencing, children's safety being paramount. And as we've gone through the meeting, the officers have actually mitigated all of those items, which has been interesting. And I was left with one, which was, no one seems to have mentioned about overlooking. Previously, when I've been talking about nurseries with nurseries, they always concerned about neighbours or people being able to overlook their children for unfortunate reasons. And I just wondered if that's a consideration here. And so that's basically my last question out of my long list, which has already been dealt with by others at length. Thank you.
Thank you. Officers.
Through you, Chair. In terms of overlooking, it will be you're saying that the site itself is overlooked, or there's potential to overlook, or is it there may be a concern?
I have no idea. I'd ask you.
I think with the properties around the boundary treatments and the separation distances, I don't think that would be an issue. I mean, even if it was fairly close, I don't think it's something that planning would have a case to refuse on.
Yeah.
So human behaviour is not, I think, reasonable to do. I see your point, but in this case, I don't think there are any properties that do look straight into that side area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ray, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, I'm still concerned over the implied response from Highways, which says that this is unlikely to be 24 movements. If there's 24 children, there is the possibility that it could be 24. There is a possibility it could only be 10, but we don't know. So we have to make sure we look at the worst case scenario and judge it on that, Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any more people wishing to speak? In which case, we have had a proposal and the seconder. The proposal incorporated a new condition that was mentioned at the start that you wish to speak to. I can't see.
It just strikes me. I know we have a proposal on the table that's been duly seconded. However, there is so much concern around the vehicular access and the potential of an in and out. I'm just wondering whether, Chairman, we ought to defer this application so that there's a chance for people to look at it in greater detail and perhaps have discussion with the applicant about the feasibility of an in and out, and have that incorporated into this application. Because it's not something that we can design on the day, as we all know, but I think there's enough concern to say, should we consider it? But I know you have to deal with the proposal on the table first.
We do indeed. And that proposal, if it falls, then we have another proposal to do something else. But Councillor Skiggs.
And I would second Tony's proposal if it falls.
Let's get to that point first.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
So no further speakers on the main point. So the proposal was to accept as per officer recommendation, plus the new condition that was mentioned at the start, plus the changes to condition 9, as discussed. And that's been seconded by proposer and seconder. So shall we go to the vote on that? All those in favour, please show. Well, 4. And all those against, please show. 1, 2, 3.
Abstaining, Jim.
3. Which means it's carried 4-3 with 1 abstention. So P form 2025 06825 168 Springdale Road, Clothmullen, BH21 3QN is approved with the changes to the conditions. And then that, because we have no urgent items, we have no exempt business, brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much. That's almost a record for us.